Hey, David.
Hey, Carrie.
Thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, it's a total pleasure. Very happy to be here.
Wonderful. So, I'm just going to give a little background to how I know David. So, let's see. We met about 3 years ago. And when I signed up for one of your workshops in Dublin, your movement medicine workshops, and I'd never heard of it before, but within an hour of being in the class, I was just so touched and loved it. So ever since then, David encouraged me to go ahead with the movement medicine apprenticeship, which has just completely changed my life. I'm so grateful for it. And since then, I've heard the call to bring David and other faculty members to America and Canada to share this amazing work. And as we all know, because of the pandemic, we've had to cancel a number of workshops this year. And so we've come up with something pretty creative in the interim because we've had such good feedback and people seem to want a lot more movement medicine. So, David, can you explain what we've come up with now?
Oh, sure, Carrie. It's really lovely to hear you. And I know you've shared with me before about your journey with movement medicine and that gateway into that first workshop in Dublin. And it always really deeply touches me and reminds me of why I do what I do in terms of hearing from people and the effect movement medicine has had on their lives. And it fills me with joy to hear it, to be honest. And it also reminds me of my own experience of finding my way to the dance floor and particularly to movement medicine. And recognizing pretty early on, like you did, this was a path that I was going to be with for a long, long time. It's just one of those moments where I felt such a deep resonance with the practice on so many different levels. That, one of the we're in such unusual times and such interesting times. And one of the reasons, to answer your question about why we're offering this in this particular format, is we're fortunate enough not to be completely locked down here, so we can go for walks on the beach. And I often get very deeply inspired when I slow down in nature and come back to it's kind of like a slower, quieter pace of nature. And then, maybe not too surprisingly, creativity bubbles up, like a creative response to these particular times. And I could see a lot of online offerings popping up, which is it's so beautiful to see and witness that. And there was a place where I also missed a little bit of the containment and a little bit of a more alongside journey that you get when you say do weekend workshops or all the way up to an apprenticing program. So I wanted to find that flavor of being alongside together in a safe, contained place where we have contractual agreements around safety and boundaries, and so that we have that safety to drop in a little more and can really share from the heart about what's going on for us during these times. And we can journey together through these amazing practices of movement medicine to resource us in these very, very interesting times. There's actually quite a bit of potential as well as all the challenge that we're meeting in terms of where we are in this kind of tidal wave of change all of a sudden. One place I see a potential is there's an awful lot that has stopped and slowed down. So there's a little bit more time to listen if we have the resources to do so. And one of the ways that I can see there's a potential in this is bringing that alchemical practice of movement medicine into our own home. So normally there's a bit of a challenge to bring our experiences, which can be quite strong and deep and profound from the dance floor, back to our home life. Whereas what we're offering here, out of a response, to these times and adversity is often the birthplace of lots of creative ideas. So I'm actually very, very excited about this possibility of each of us connecting in a safe container, being on an alongside journey, and even in between the sessions, having connection and the space to connect. Where we really bring these practices into our own home, into our own lives, and into the space that we find ourselves in, that most of us can't move very far from that space at the moment. So it's really about bringing these practices right into our lives. And these practices are profound. These practices are simple, but they're profound. And that I can say from my own experiences of how I've learned to befriend my emotions. And of course, our emotions, I imagine if you're like me and a lot of people, emotions can be quite heightened during these times. So this is we work with very specific practices in movement medicine to really learn to not block our emotions, but befriend our emotions from a more resourced place where the body, heart, and mind are not in competition, but actually working together, and the river flows a bit freer, where we don't get overwhelmed by our emotions, so we're not hijacked by the heart and the emotions and the responses of the nervous system. But we can learn to let the rivers flow a bit freer, but not get overwhelmed so that we can be grounded and free and in a position to respond a bit more creatively to the times that we're in. So I'm so happy to bring this all the way from a little island, Ireland, to the States. And it just, I mean, the wonders of technology that we can do this. And I've been working online for many, many years as a therapist and in various different ways. So I know the potential for intimate, deep contact when the conditions are appropriate and when we have enough ground of collective safety together.
It's marvelous. Thank you so much for explaining it that way, and I'm really looking forward to doing this myself. I know that I'm in like a pattern interrupt right now, and it's the perfect moment for this medicine. So can you tell us more about the format and what's going to happen in the course and what you have in mind for us?
Absolutely, Gary. So the journey is called the Inner Alchemist, and it's a journey with the alchemy of movement medicine. So, movement medicine is an alchemical practice. It's based on um, the pathways of neuroscience and latest developments in neuroscience, and the real deep research around the nervous system and how the nervous system works, and also on indigenous shamanic wisdom. So we work a lot with the elements. So in this, we'll have a 6 week format. So we'll come together on that metronomic same time every week for 6 weeks. So we'll kind of layer the practices on top of each other. We'll go through the really core practices of movement medicine. Movement medicine is such a deep, rich practice, and there's some core practices within that. So we lay the ground over these times that we're together, and we have time in between to really cultivate our connection with these practices. And as we do that, we strengthen the ground so that we can work together and witness each other and support each other in learning to use this practice called the alchemy of healing. And the alchemy of healing is it's quite a central part of movement medicine, where we deepen our relationship with the elements and the medicine and the creativity and the very particular medicinal value of each of the elements so that we can journey through. It's like the um, healing process that is biologically wired in the body. That if you look at practices such as Gestalt therapy, where you have that metoric um, cycle where we actually give ourselves permission first to embody and to really be with what is how we're feeling about these times. What is actually so we strengthen the container so we can be here, we can be present with what's going on. We can really engage the dancer inside of us so that we can resource ourselves to move with, articulate, and express whatever we need to, whatever's ruminating inside of us. Sometimes it can get stuck in the heart with heavy emotions, or get really activated in the mind with, I don't know, some of us, with the very busy mind, or there's lots of different ways that stuck energy can manifest in our behaviors, in our feelings, or in our thought patterns. So this practice is an opportunity to really ground, rooted in the body, in the practice of movement medicine, in the dancer that each of us is, so that we can articulate and express whatever we need to in without getting overwhelmed. So this practice, we always come back to that window of tolerance, so that we don't bypass the body's natural instinct to regulate. We're always looking to cultivate a sense of listening in the body, listening to the wisdom that is inside our own being. So that's the core of this practice, is interoception. So once we have expressed and articulated, then we can move over to, so the earth is about embodiment and about interoception and about really mobilizing the instrument of this practice, which is the dancer. And we'll work on that together. And, that can be really deeply joyous and fun. That can be a beautiful meditation practice. That capacity to reclaim the sovereign dancer inside each of us. Such a liberating and beautiful practice. And then from that resource place, we articulate and express whatever we need to. And this could be just like a chance to let off steam, discharge, or give permission to body to move whatever it needs to, and then move over to the waters to shake out and release whatever we need to. We've been doing this kind of thing for thousands of years. And this is about relearning, remembering about indigenous ways to meet adversity, to meet the challenges of being human. And we have a very interesting set of adverse conditions to meet right now, to bring these practices to awaken that dancer inside of us. I was just listening to a podcast there, just while I was cutting the grass just before we met, and there was there was these two researchers, biological researchers, talking about how this particular islanders off the coast of America, where they weren't, it's in the Pacific Ocean actually, and where they weren't, there was no meeting with the Western world for a long time, and they could still navigate, and they could navigate their boats by looking at the currents of the water, by listening to the wind, by seeing the patterns of bird flight. So they were very deeply connected into the wisdom of nature, and they could use that to orientate in life. Very, very beautiful. We have this wisdom, we have this connection dormant inside of us. So it's not gone. All we do is, when we awaken a dancer and we use the resource of these practices, we reconnect, we reawaken that dormant wisdom, that indigenous wisdom inside of us. That's what this practice is about. We've always had adversity, and in some ways we've gotten quite comfortable in the sense of um, meeting the wild edge of nature. Meeting the wild edge of nature keeps something alive in the body. And this is a practice where you can still stay resourced, not feel under any threat, but awaken that indigenous wild energy inside. And why is that good to do that? It's really good to do that because once you awaken that connection, once you awaken those dormant with the cells that are inside that have always been connected to that same wisdom of those islanders, once you really awaken that and bring it, like allow it to flow through the blood in your dance so that it can awaken all those dormant cells in the body, we can remember what we're connected to. We're connected to this immense living earth. And when you think of the creativity in the living earth and the wisdom that the earth has in terms of being able to bring balance and healing to parts of the earth that have been scarred or damaged, where It will, like that story of how when the rivers were changed in Yellowstone, how the wolves came back, and actually it's the other way around. The wolves came back, and then the rivers changed, and then the fish came back. So nature has an intrinsic intelligence that is oriented towards health, and we are part of that nature. So this practice of movement medicine, we really deepen our connection with the elements, with the awakening the dancer practice, which is the sovereign practice of movement medicine. And we connect with the tree of life, which is deep roots connected to the earth, connected to the sun and the sky above and the stars and the moon. And we really allow the wisdom of this practice to come into our being. And we do this together. So this is a practice that you find your way to the medicine that is inside of you, but we do that together. This is a very relational practice. And in around week 5, we'll work with the 5 dimensions of awareness, or the 5 circles of connection, which are at the heart of movement medicine: the connection to self, your own body, heart, mind, your own circle, connection to others. And we have very beautiful ways to do that online: connection to the communities that you're connected to. Really good time to strengthen your relationship to what matters to you in your communities. Even though we can't be physically together, we can still allow our hearts to open to those connections that are already strong. Connection to nature and the wisdom of the natural world that is inside you, that is inside all of us. Connection to the imagination is the fourth dimension. Connection to that capacity to dream. So we may be stuck in 4 walls a lot of the day, but we can take flight in our imagination. We can really connect with the Amazon. We can connect with the eagle flying in the sky. We can make these connections. And neuroscience shows us that when we engage the imagination, our physiology changes, our immune system gets stronger. Isn't that fascinating? That all we have to do is imagine the strength of our nervous system or the strength of our immunology, and it actually strengthens itself. There's lots of beautiful research that's been done around this and the power of the imagination. So when we work with that fourth dimension, we work with those who've come before us, those who come after us. There is a grace that could be possible in this pause time of really placing ourselves on that arc of time and taking a moment to pause and to recognize those who've come before us and to see that there is medicine, there's wisdom there. So there's the torch of life that's been passed on for generations. And sometimes in this practice, we can go as far back as we want until we meet a sense of health and connection with our ancestors. And this pause could be a graceful time, as they do in lots of indigenous practices, including the Lakota on Turtle Island and those beautiful lands of America and Canada, where they spend a lot of time connecting with the ancestors, a lot of time. And we can resource that connection. We can feel resource from that connection, and we can offer a dance back to those who couldn't dance before. A very simple way. And we can dance to really open our hearts to what really matters to us in this time. So that those dream seeds in the heart, we all have them. Even take a moment to feel those dream seeds in your own heart. We all have them, and we have them abundantly. So we can give time in the dance to water those seeds and to really listen to and to give the creativity of the dance to what really matters to us at this time. What a beautiful opportunity to pause and take a breath and to dance with what really matters to us. And what is ours to give in this time into that great mystery. This is a time of the unknown for all of us. So all these practices strengthen our resilience to meet the unknown.
Wow, my whole I'm smiling and my whole body is I feel that I'm now my physiology has just changed. I mean, I feel so resonant with everything you've just said, and it's beautiful. Every time we connect, I learn something new that really resonates with me. So, um, gosh, so we're going to do this together,
Yeah.
24 dancers, um, and you and some movement medicine assistants. We're going to start on April 19th at 10 a.m. Central Time, and then meet 6 consecutive Sundays after that. And I mean, you've said so much. It's really beautiful, David. Thanks so much for putting this together at this time for us. Really appreciate it.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. I think the main thing, Carrie, is really the space for people to feel safe, to be able to share together about how they are in these times, and to offer some of these extraordinary resources and tools of movement medicine, for people to feel a bit more, have a bit more agency and a bit more connection to creativity
Mm.
and the ground of um, this extraordinary practice to lean into.
Well, I look forward to seeing you there. And again, thank you so much.
Oh, pleasure.